Hey everyone, it's TK Friday. Today it's enhancing finished images. Stay tuned. Hello everyone and welcome to the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly and happy TK Friday. I'm so glad you're joining me today. Glad to have each and every one of you on board. And I want to thank everyone for their comments and questions and for subscribing to the channel. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe because that helps my channel to grow. I really appreciate that. And click that bell notification icon so you don't miss a single tutorial. If you're interested in printing your images or you want to make better prints, pick up the new course called Producing Better Prints. Use the promo codes BP20 to save 20% off. Plus, you can combine my code DK15 and get another 15% off. So that's great. And don't forget about the TK8 Plugin For Photoshop along with any training videos. If you use my promo code DK15, you'll save 15% on all products found on Tony Kuiper's website, and I'll give you a link in the description below. I'm working with stock images today, and I'll leave links in the description below where you can download those and follow along with me if you'd like to. So let's get started. This first image is a boat scene. Now, we all have images that we've worked on in the past, and maybe before we were even using the TK8 plugin for Photoshop, and we would like to improve some of those images. That's why I'm calling this tutorial Enhancing Finished Images. On this image, I'm looking at, and it's really nice and it's really well done, but what I'd like to do is look at the highlights, midtones, and the shadows and see if I can enhance those a little bit and maybe add a little bit of a gradient, darkening the bottom up into this boat area. Now we have these bushes here that we need to take care of, and I'll show you how to do that with the TK8 plugin for Photoshop. But we're going to start out by enhancing the highlights, and then we'll move to the midtones and shadows, and then we'll tackle this darkening at the bottom. Now, starting out with the highlights, I think the highlights are a little bit too hot. I'd like to tame them down a bit. I think we'll see more detail in these clouds and different parts in here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and add, like, you can do a curves adjustment layer, levels. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to do a levels on here because all I'm using it for is a blend mode. Now, I've introduced this to you at least last week or maybe the week before that as well, but this is a really good way of darkening things. Now, I want to darken the highlights, so I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply. Now the image gets really dark, but don't worry about it. We're going to go ahead and hide that adjustment. Right now we have a white reveal all mask. We're going to click this icon on the CX or combo panel, and that puts a black mask on there, and that hides it. And again, I'll be working with highlights, midtones, and shadows. We'll start out with highlights, but we're going to be working with this icon right here. This is layer mask mode, and I love layer mask mode, and it's great for doing things like this, and you'll see why here. But let's click it and open it up. Now remember, we have a multiply blend mode here, which is darkening the entire image. We don't see it because of this black mask. But remember, I want to work on the highlights. So this is really cool. If I click on lights 1, and you see here's all my luminosity masks, you know, the darks, the lights, and the midtones. If I click on lights 1, watch what happens. I get a lights 1 mask here, and you see how the image has changed. Now, if I do a lights 2, watch the image when I go to a lights 2. You can actually see it changing before your eyes. And this helps us determine which one of these lights masks will be the best. But I'm thinking like lights 1 does a really nice job, as you can see right there. Let's try lights 2. Lights 2 is not quite as strong. And maybe lights 2 is pretty good. Let me try lights 1 again. Okay, I'm thinking lights 1, but I think it's too strong of an effect. So let's take the opacity, and all we have to do is drag this opacity back. And let's see what we like here. There's around a 60. Let's take a look. I'm going to click this eye to shut this layer off. This is the before, and this is the after. But you see how nicely that is just toned down those highlights. Pretty cool, right? And again, this layer mask mode is really helpful. And by the way, all these tools here are to be used in layer mask mode if you need them. You know, you got dodge and burn tools, paint brushes, you can expand or contract. You can do all kinds of things. You have curves, levels, auto adjustments. You can invert, you can add some feathering. So these are all at your disposal. I don't really need it for these basic adjustments, but they are here. Next, I want to darken some of the deepest shadows just to add a little bit more contrast into this scene. So I'm going to go ahead and let's X out here. I'm going to grab another levels adjustment, or it could be a curves. It doesn't matter. I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply because I want to darken the really darkest shadows. Now that gets everything right, but I'll put the black mask on here, hides the entire adjustment. Then we'll go back to layer mask mode. And this time I'm looking for darks, right? So if I click on darks 1, notice how it's only going to target the darks 1. You see that? And now as I keep moving to the left, it'll narrow that range down into darker darks. There's darks 2, here's darks 3, here's darks 4, and I think I like darks 4. Let me click this eye here. Here is the before, and here's the after, but really gives me some nice extra contrast just in that darks 4 area, which is really nice. Now, it might be a bit too strong, so I'll take the opacity and just draw it back just a little bit. Okay, to maybe like around 83. Here's the before, and here's after. But you see how nice and easy that is, and you see how this layer mode adjustment really is very helpful. So let me go ahead and X out here. I have one more adjustment to make, and that is in the midtones. And just as a refresher, if you ever want to see a mask, just go to the layer where you want to see the mask and click this double arrow icon, and you can see what that mask looks like. And remember, the light areas are what's being targeted, which is that darks 4 zone. Now click this again and you'll see the image back. And now for the midtones. Let's go ahead and add another levels adjustment layer. And this time I want to lighten the midtones a little bit, because I feel the midtones just need a little bit of lightening, not much. So let's change the blend mode from normal to screen. Now remember, multiply darkens, but screen lightens, okay? And let's hide that adjustment because now the image looks way too light. So we'll click right here on this icon, this black icon. We'll put a black hide all layer mask on it. Now we'll go back into layer mask mode. And this time we're going to work with midtones. So we have midtones 1, 2, and 3. Let's click on midtones 1. And you see how that's lightened up that midtone? Now that's good. That's a little bit too light, but if you want to see what midtones 2 looks like, we can click here and see how the mask gets a little bit lighter. And then here's midtones 3. But that's way too light. I'm going to go back to midtones 1, take the opacity, drag it back. I'm going to take it the whole way off and then just slowly build up the midtones. And I'm thinking right around a 50. Let's see, here is a before and here is an after. Before and after. I might just bring it down just a little bit more, maybe a 44. Here's a before and here's an after. But you see how nice this layer mask mode really helps us to really make adjustments quick and easily. And this is a really great way of working, again, enhancing finished images where you just really want to touch up the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows. Now I have one more midtone adjustment, and that is one to add contrast to only the midtones, which could be a really great adjustment for any of your images. Okay, so let me show you how I do that. Now this time, for this adjustment, I need a curves adjustment layer. Let me X out of this layer mask mode, and let me grab a curves adjustment layer. And now all we need to do is go back into layer mask mode by clicking this icon. And now we're going to go and click on midtones 1 right here. Puts a mids 1 mask on here. And then check this out. All we need to do is come up to preset. And right now it's set for default, just one linear curve, which is really doing nothing. So we're going to come here and we're just going to go to increase contrast RGB. And that puts that curve on there. Now check this out. This is just a mid-tone boost here, a contrast boost. So check this out. Here's the before and here's the after. But you see that nice little mid-tone contrast boost, and it really is nice. Now, the last thing I want to do is add a gradient to darken off the bottom of the image up to the boat. I think it's too light here, so let's darken that up a bit. All we need to do here, let's X out of here. We're going to get a levels or curves, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to use it for a multiply blend mode to darken everything. So let's put it on multiply. And then we'll put a black mask on it to hide it. I'll be using a gradient to darken this area right here. So I'm going to grab this gradient tool, and right now my foreground and background color paint swatches are set for white for the foreground color and black for the background color. Okay, so I want white. So I'm going to hold my shift key down and I'm going to click right here and drag up, and that'll give me a gradient up to the boat. But you can see I have a problem because it's darkening these bushes here, which does not look good. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that by clicking this button on the TK8 CXer combo panel, just to go back a step to get rid of that gradient. So now what I need to do is select the bush and this rock here. Okay, step one is to add a levels adjustment, put it in the multiply blend mode, put a black mask on it, and now I want to get my object selection tool, and you'll see I have it in the lasso mode and I have sample all layers set. So I'm just going to drag a selection around here and let the artificial intelligence of Photoshop take care of this around the rock like so. And we'll see what it does here. It does a pretty good job, I believe. Yes, it does. We still have to refine it. So what we're going to do next is come over to the TK8 CXer combo panel and click on S&M for select and mask, and then we're going to work on this area right here, and it's really easy to do. I'm going to pull up this opacity a little bit more to make this pink a little stronger so you can see it. Now the pink area is not selected. This area over here is selected. So what I need to do is use this tool right here, which is the Refine Edge Brush tool. I'm going to make it a little bit larger, and I'm just going to paint like right in here. Okay, all these areas in here. And then I'm going to come around the rock, and you'll notice I have a nice big brush on there. And now you can see all the magenta areas are not selected, just the bush itself is selected. And it's doing a really nice job. I'm going to make the brush a little bit smaller and just come up around in here. Make sure it's got all this selected really nicely in this area right here. And yeah, I think it looks good. Think I'm happy with that. Now all I have to do is I have this outputting to a selection, click OK. And at this point on the TK8 CX panel, I can come right here and click, and I'll save this as, I'll call this bush and rock, and click OK. That'll save it as a channel, and you can see it right down here. Now I can go ahead and deselect this selection by clicking right here on the CXer combo panel, and that deselects my selection. Now we're going to go ahead and get that gradient tool. I'm holding the shift key down, which constrains it to give me a straight line up and down. So I'm going to hold the shift like right around here and click and drag up like so. And it darkens that area, and again it gets my bush, but not a problem. And now what we need to do is come up to my channels, and right now I want to load this layer mask, so click on layer mask. And now we need the mask calculator, so click on the mask calculator and click on subtract. Then we're going to X out of here, and now we're going to go back to my channels and we're going to click on bush and rock because we want to subtract that from our selection, right? So we're going to click equals, and now we have that. And now all we need to do is apply that to our layer mask by clicking this icon right here. And now check it out, before and after. And now we've protected our bush. Now, if that effect's too strong, we can take the opacity and just pull it back just a little wee bit. Now, here's before, and here is the after. And now all the water behind the bush is selected perfectly. And that is it. Now, we started out right here. Here's our before, and here's our after. So it was already a nice image, but we just added some finishing touches to it, so to speak. And there you go. On this image, I spent some time with the shadows, midtones, and highlights, and darkened off the bottom of the water here with a gradient. And I have two more examples. I'll be doing other things to those images. But again, we have older images that we can go back and revisit and maybe enhance them a little bit. And that is what this tutorial is all about. On this flower image, what I'm noticing is I think these flowers are a little undersaturated. Some of the flowers have good saturation, like these buds here and this particular flower right here. They have a lot of saturation, but I'd like to bring up some of the saturation on these other flowers. I'm going to show you an interesting way of doing this, kind of keeping in theme with last week's Mask the Mask tutorial, working with the multi-mask panel. All right, then I want to bring up some of these weaker colors. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this color mask icon, And let's select a color like right here and click OK. And you can see my selection. Now I'm going to take this brightness adjustment and drag it to the right and just really lighten up that area. Now feathering is good, and I think I have my colors good here, but you notice it's also selecting this branch here, which I don't want. But that's where the mask will come in. So let's go ahead and lighten this up a little bit more by clicking on this levels adjustment. And all I want to do is drag this midtone slider to the left just to lighten up that area a little bit more, just to give me a little bit more stronger selection. Now that I've made my selection, I'm going to come over and click on this double arrow tool so I can see my image, and I'm going to hand pick out the flowers I want to bring the saturation up on. So I'm going to type my L key to get my lasso tool. Okay, now this bud right here I don't want to bring saturation up, nor this one, but this flower I do. So I'm going to just draw a lasso around here. I can be sloppy, it doesn't matter. I want this flower here. Now to add to this selection, you have to hold your shift key down the whole time you're drawing your lasso around. I'm going to stay away from the flower next to it. Okay, I'm going to grab this flower here like so. I want this flower right here. Now I'm going to show you something. I don't want the center portion of this because it'll get too much saturation. So I'm going to hold my Alt or Option key down and and that'll subtract from that selection right there. I don't want that area affected. Now I'm going to hold my Shift key down. I don't want this bud. I'm holding my Shift key down. I'm going to stay away from this stem, but I'm going to come around this bud and this bud, just like this, watching that I stay away from that stem. I don't want this one, but I do want this one down in here and this one over here. And again, I want to stay away from the stem, just like so. And then I want these two here. Now I'm holding my Shift key down the whole time I'm adding to my selection. So don't forget that. So there I go. So now let's go back and click the double arrow again. We can see our mask. Now all we have to do is click this mask the mask button right here. And remember, feather selection comes up. If you don't want to feather, which I don't want to, I'm just going to click cancel. And there's my selection just like that. Pretty cool, right? And now all we need to do is output this layer mask. So we're going to output it to a hue saturation adjustment layer. So click right here because we're going to adjust the saturation on these flowers that we selected. So I'm just going to take the saturation slider and drag it to the right. And notice how I just get the flowers I want. I think that is pretty cool, so I can selectively pick out the flowers I want. And I think right there, now let's take a look. Here is the before, and here is the after. Now, if I shut off this layer mask, you can see, if I click this X here, what it would look like without that mask, okay? Click it again, and now we're back to the mask. Now, there's one last thing I want to do, and that is just to bring a little bit of harmony to this image, to enhance it a bit, and that's to darken down these green leaves just slightly. I'm going to go to the color mask tool again, click it, and I want to darken down some of these leaves. So I'm going to click this right here, click OK, and you can see the selection. I'm just going to lighten it up a little bit with this like so, and you notice how I get a beautiful texturing here. The areas that are darker will not get as much of the effect. The areas that are lighter will get more. All I need to do is output this to either a levels or a curves adjustment layer. And so let's do a curves. I'm going to click right here. I'm going to put it in the multiply blend mode to darken it. Now that's too dark. So I'm going to take this opacity and just start to drag it back. I'll take it the whole way off and just slowly move it to the right just to darken those leaves a little bit. And again, I just want to bring a little bit of harmony. There's 48%. Here's the before and here's the after. Now here's the overall before and here's the overall after. So just a slight enhancement to this one. And now I have one more image to work on. This is a little bit different, but on this image, I want to darken some of the darkest shadows just to set the girl out a little bit more. In contrast, I want to lighten up this dress a little bit and darken some of the shadows down in the dress. And I want to darken this hand up a little bit. Just a few things I want to do. I'm going to start out by setting myself up for success, and that's to select my subject. So what I'm going to do is just come to the TK8 CX or combo panel and click this icon to select out our subject. and it selects the subject. And now I have to do a little bit of refinement because it missed some areas on her here. Okay, so let's click the S&M on the CXR combo panel, and that will take us into the select and mask. I'm just going to use the refinement brush here, and I'll make it a little bit larger, and I just want to go in between the fingers here like so and get that. And let's see what else. It missed a little bit of her hair. I'm going to get this other tool. You can just add to the selection because I've tried the refine before and this didn't work, so I'm just going to add this area back in right like that. And I think this is some hair in here that it's missed as well. Now I'm going to get the refine tool and just come around here to refine this a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect, and I think it's got everything pretty well. I'm just going to go with that. I think that's going to be good. And all I'm going to do is output this as a selection, click OK. And now we're going to save this as a channel. So come here on the CXR combo panel and click right here. And we're just going to call this subject. And click OK, and that will save it out as a channel. I'll be using that subject channel in a minute here, but first off, what we're going to do is deselect our selection by clicking right here. Now, the first thing I want to do is darken up some of these shadow areas, okay, in here and back in here. So I got to find the right mask. So let's click on the luminosity mask icon, and I'm going to click on Darks 1, because remember, it's shadows. That's too much of the shadows. Let's try Darks 2, Darks 3. It's getting more narrow, and Darks 4. I like Darks 4. Now, I can lighten this up a little bit, and this is very important. Up here, we have all these different color channels. Try to find a channel that'll make these areas a little bit lighter so they'll be selected more. So let's try. Here's red. Now, that's not good. Here's green. It's a little brighter. Here's blue. It's brighter yet. Here's cyan. It's pretty much the same. Here's magenta. Not as much. Here's yellow. Not as much. I think I'm going to settle on blue. But if you'll notice my mask here, it's selecting the hair and the eyes and the neck area. I do not want to affect the person at all. But remember, I made that subject channel. Okay, so what we're going to do is click on the mask calculator. We're going to subtract. So click on the minus, X out of here. Go to My Channels and click on Subject, and now click Equals. And now you'll notice the subject is subtracted, and that's what we want. Now I'm going to output this to a levels or curves, it doesn't matter, or brightness, contrast. I'm going to do levels. I'm going to change the blend mode from normal to multiply. And just like that, my shadows are dark. And here's the before and here's the after. Just that easy. And if that's too strong, you can take the opacity back, but I think I like it. Again, here is the before and here is the after, and the model is protected. So that's the first thing I want to do. The next thing I want to do is slightly lighten up this, I'm going to call it a dress for lack of a better name. I don't know these things for women, but anyway, I'm going to call this a dress. This area here is already a little lighter, so I want to protect that a little bit. I'm going to go with a zone mask, so let's click on the zone mask icon, and I'm going to pick some of these tones like right in here and click OK. And now I'm going to go, right now I'm at like a zone 7.5. Let's try a zone 8. See, that's lightening. This area is lighter here, so I'm going to try, let's try zone 6. I like zone 6 look because it's not getting quite as affected in this area. Let me try zone 5. Yeah, but it's missing a lot of this. So I think that zone 6 is going to be good. I think it's protecting the areas I want. Let me take this brightness slider and drag it to the right a little bit and see if I can lighten that area up just a little bit, not too much, maybe right around there. Let me try the tighten here. Tighten this a little bit. I think right there looks pretty good. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different here. I'm going to get my object selection tool. And you know, I could click the double arrow and just see the image itself, or I could try just doing it on the mask. Let's just try doing it on the mask and see. Sometimes you get a better selection if you do it when you actually see the image. But I'm just going to come around here, drag around here, and see how it selects this dress. Going to come up around in here and around here and end up here. And it does a pretty good job the whole way around. It misses this area here, but just hold your Alt or Option key down and just subtract that area like that. And that gets it off of there. So I think we're good. Now we're going to mask the mask. So come here and click this icon. to mask the mask. Now we don't want any feathering, so click cancel and it selects it out. And now I can output this to, say levels or curves. I'm going to do levels, and whoops, I clicked on the wrong level adjustment. This adjustment is for altering the way my mask looks. Click the wrong one. I'm going to leave this in. I actually want this levels right here. So again, these gray areas here, these are for working on the mask itself. Now we'll output it to a levels adjustment layer, and it's this one right here, or you could use curves, it doesn't matter. We're just going to use a blend mode here. So let's click on this, and there it is. There's our mask attached to this levels adjustment layer, but nothing has changed, right? Because when I click the eye, you'll see nothing has changed. But what I want to do is lighten this dress up. So how would I lighten it? Well, if you're thinking a screen blend mode, you're correct. So let's click on that. Now that's way too bright. Here's the before and here's the after, but it's lightening it. So let me go ahead and take the opacity the whole way off. And now let's just drag this up slowly. And I just want to add a little bit of lightening there. Not too much, but a little bit. That's like 36, and I think that's good. Here's the before and here's the after. Just a nice, delicate lightening of that dress. And next, I just want to darken some of the shadows here, just to maintain some texture in the dress. And what I'll do is grab another, let's just do another levels, and I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply. I'm going to hide that so we don't see the adjustment by clicking this icon right here. It puts a black mask to hide that. And now I'm going to grab a zone mask tool and just some of these shadow areas right here. I think this tone, I'm going to click it and click OK. And now what I can do is, I always call this tighten and lighten. So I'm going to tighten up my selection like so. And that's getting what I want. And I'm going to lighten it a little bit with this. And now what I want to do is I want to output this to a black mask, and I'll be painting through a selection because I want to vary the amounts of the shadow areas with a brush. And I'll click this icon. Now I'll be painting with a white brush onto a black mask and painting through a selection. Right now I'm at 50% opacity. I'm going to type my 2 key and just paint on some of these areas just to darken them up a little wee bit. I'm painting at 20%. I'm going to stay away from some of these other areas, but just some of these shadow areas in here just to maintain a little bit of texture. That's all. That's all I really want to do. Okay, so let's take a look. Here is the before. And here's the after. Not much, but just a little. It just maintains a little texture. If we want to see what this mask looks like, click the double arrow icon here, and that's what it looks like. Painting through a selection is very effective when you need to vary the amounts of lightening or darkening, because every time you lift your brush, you're incrementally adding a little bit more of the effect, which really helps you to get very precise adjustments. And the last thing I want to do is darken this hand. Okay, so what I'm going to do is come up to my channels, select the subject, click on the double arrow icon so I can see everything here. I'm going to grab my object selection tool. This area will not get selected that well. If I just lasso with the lasso tool around here, it's going to mess up down around here. So I need it to be very accurate here, but not up here. And you'll see why here in a second. So if I just lasso around this area right like this, you can see I get a very nice selection. Now let's click the double arrow again. And now what I need to do is just get a regular lasso tool. So I'll just type L. And now I have to hold my shift key down to add to the selection. Very important, don't forget that. And just go right around here like that. And now all I need to do is click the mask tool. No feathering, click cancel. And I've selected that, right? And now all I need to do is output this to a levels or curves. I'll do levels again. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply. Now our hand gets really dark, but it just nicely selects the hand. And now all I need to do is take this opacity, take it the whole way off, and just build it up slowly. I just want to darken it up just a tiny wee bit. So here is the before and here's the after, just that slight darkening. And that's all I really wanted to do to enhance this finished image. And here's the overall before, and here is the after. Well, there it is, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you enjoyed this tutorial today, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe and click that bell notification icon. And then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll be notified about it. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. And I'll see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.